Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Getting back to a discussion we've had quite extensively this morning in the wake of the two National Guardsmen who were shot, one of whom was murdered, the other fighting for his life. And, of course, the fallout from that in terms of who is responsible for the failure to properly vet people granted asylum to this country. What's the predicate question is it even possible to vet people from third world countries like Afghanistan, but not limited to Afghanistan? Is Trump striking the right tone and taking the right evasive action in the wake of those targeted killing and attempted killing? And what is our expectation for the course correction the Trump administration is going to make with respect to not just the Afghan refugee population or asylumee population, I suppose, but more generally with the granting of asylum? How are they going to process what Kristi Noem talked about, the 1.5 million asylum applications that are backlogged, much less checking. Doing what? Doing some sort of individualized status check on the 70,000 plus Afghan asylumees that were granted a categorical parole after Afghan fell and the Taliban took over. It's complicated stuff. Chad Robichaux, I mentioned earlier in the show, is a Marine vet who served in Afghanistan. He had some good perspectives on what he expected to happen back in 2021 when we experienced that after we experienced that catastrophic retreat by the Biden administration 6 months earlier. And then the indiscriminate categorical parole that I just mentioned.
The NGOs were doing the evacuations. We were evacuating people out of Afghanistan, not bringing people to America. In fact, no NGO, no individual has the ability and authority to bring someone to America. The only people that does is the United States government. And during the time of evacuations, we were watching the U.S. military, forced by Joe Biden. I have to give credit. Our service members did an amazing job there, but right. Forced by Biden's White House to put unvetted, undocumented Afghans on planes and fly them straight to the United States and let them loose in the interior of the country, 80 to 100,000 of them. And when that happened, I knew immediately, it can't go well. Eventually, one of them has to be a bad guy and is going to do an attack on the United States, and this would happen.
And it's been more than one. We've had, one that was just sentenced from terrorist actions that took place around the election in Oklahoma, and then two more this past week. The guy who posted the TikTok video making a bomb and threatening Department of Homeland Security, and obviously the shooter. Report last year from Department of Homeland Security, obtained by Chuck Grassley. Nearly 7,000 of those Afghan asylees had derogatory information, including more than 5,000 characterized as the derogatory information being national security related problem. Trump knew it back in 2021. This is an interview he gave with Cheryl Atkinson.
And nobody knows who the hell they are, Cheryl. These aren't the interpreters that we taught. These were people that rushed into the planes, and they were so interested in trying to make it sound like, they're doing a good job. These people, many of these people are going to be terrorists, okay? They're going to be terrorists. They were very powerful. They were very energetic in getting onto the aircraft.
They say they're vetting them very carefully with biometrics and documentation.
They're not doing that, and you can't because there is no documentation in that country.
J.D. Vance in 2021, just to close the loop, sparring with then Republican Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska.
I see that Senator Ben Sasse went on national TV yesterday and attacked me for suggesting we should focus on getting our own citizens out of Afghanistan rather than the Afghan refugees. And he said great countries honor their word. Of course, nobody disagrees with that. It's a ridiculous platitude. The question is not whether we honor our word. The question is who have we made promises to? Who do we owe an obligation toward? And to any leader of this country, the obvious answer should be American citizens. So let's focus first on getting them out of Afghanistan before we say another word about the Afghan refugees. Now, Senator Sasse also said that he would welcome the Afghan refugees to his neighborhood with open arms. That's very sweet of him. I'm sure a lot of liberals will say very nice things about him because he said that. But the question is not whether we help the Afghan refugees. The question is, first, how do we do it? And second, how do we do it in a way that doesn't destroy our own sovereignty? So let's have an honest question about what exists in Afghanistan. According to Pew, 40% of the people there believe that blowing yourself up, committing a suicide bombing, is an acceptable way to solve a problem. So yes, let's help the Afghans who helped us, but let's ensure that we're properly vetting them so that we don't get a bunch of people who believe they should blow themselves up at a mall because somebody looked at their wife the wrong way. That is not real leadership. Real leadership is accepting the trade-offs of the situation, putting our own citizens first, and not dealing with fake platitudes because it gets people in the media to say nice things about you.
For more on this, pleased to be joined for our weekly conversation with Stephen Bucci, who served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
As always, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me back.
So I guess the predicate question, as I mentioned, is it possible to vet individuals seeking asylum from third world countries like Afghanistan or Syria or Somalia, for that matter, or as Tom Homan said, it's just there's no real way to do it. As Jim Comey said, actually, at the end of the Obama administration about the prospect of Syrian refugees and the FBI getting involved in assisting with the vetting, there's no real way to do it. What do you think?
Yeah, there really isn't a viable way to do it. I mean, you can go to extraordinary means, check with Interpol, check with all of our allies, check with the Israelis. There's ways to gather the information, but those systems are not there to do hundreds of thousands or even millions of people in a relatively quick way. That's how you check one guy who's coming over and saying that he now wants to defect to our side. You do that really deep vetting. That takes a lot of time. And you don't for sure let the people go into your country while you're doing that vetting, because that's nuts. You know this person has a potential to be a bad guy. You either incarcerate them until you finish the vetting, or you make them wait someplace else while you're doing the vetting. You don't let them into America and turn them loose on our citizens before you do it. So it's sort of a jumbled answer. There's no fast way to do it. There's no guaranteed effective way to do it. There are methods that can be used, but they're designed for one-offs or very small groups of people over whom you have 100% control while you're doing the vetting.
Well, this Chad Robichaux, this Marine whose clip a clip of him I just played, he talked about getting his the translator, Afghan translator he worked with over there back here, and what happened was his translator had to go to essentially what they call a lily pad country, the UAE, and wait 9 months to get vetted, and now he's over here. So I suppose if you have a situation like in Afghanistan where you have U.S. military who worked with these individuals, then you have the prospect of having people vouch for them in terms of having interacted with them over an extended period of time and being able to separate, as Robichaud was talking about, somebody who we're working with as a mercenary because we have shared hatred of the Taliban versus someone, but does not have any love for America versus someone that really wants to come to America, and you could, in his estimation, for example, would make a contribution to America, could be an American citizen, is somebody who is willing and ready to assimilate. There's a big difference there.
Oh, totally. 100% difference. Just because you both hate the Taliban, I mean, there's a lot of really crazy radicals out there who hate America as much as they hate the Taliban.
Yeah.
But they're also very good at switching sides. So if it's advantageous today to work with the Taliban, they'll do that. If it's advantageous to work with the Americans tomorrow, then they'll do that. That's not the kind of person you want to bring into America. I mean, just for no other reason, Dan, but people that come to America, they expect that the streets really are paved with gold, that they're going to get jobs, they're going to get taken care of. Then they get here and find out, if they get a job, maybe it's the night person in a gas station in some place that doesn't like them because they're different. That's a recipe for disaster for that person who may have been, had a good thought of America. Then they get here and find out, man, this is not all it's cracked up to be. I'm going to take action. You think about those two young men that did the Boston Marathon bombing. They were here. They come in legally. They had all the benefits. They were taking welfare and everything. The older one had a job. The younger one was in school, and they still decided, no, we're going to blow these people up. It's a different mindset that we're just not really good at understanding and divining what in the end they're going to do. That's not the people you want somebody, doing temporary duty as a screener, deciding, oh yeah, this person can come in.
Yeah, that's actually Robichaud talked about that specifically too, about the feeling of betrayal, and that opens the door to radicalization. With Kristi Noem sort of intimated had occurred where this shooter lived in small town Washington State. So I mean that is that recipe. Noem also talked about those that are asylum grantees having to check in on an annualized basis. I mean, part of this whole discussion, includes an answer to the feasibility question. How many can we process, and can we, essentially check in with on a routine basis, or flag if we see something concerning on social media, for example. I mean, what is, without getting into a surveillance state. I mean, all the sort of complicated questions that we discussed after 9/11 and with respect to the Patriot Act. I mean, how overarching do you want the state to be? How much command control do you want them to have over the lives of American citizens, or even those who we've granted some sort of legal status here? And then what is feasible as well in terms of the personnel we have versus the personnel what is being suggested would require. I mean, all those seem to be unanswered questions.
Yeah, look, I one time I testified before Congress about vetting, and this was to do with the Syrians coming in. And some of the legislators were saying, look, the State Department tells us they're screening all these people 100%. And I said, you know what? That's a bunch of crap. No offense, Congressman, but they're lying to you. And one of the congressmen was a former CIA case officer. And he said, I have to say, but Dr. Bucci's right here. When I was, a case officer, my cover in one of the countries I went to was as a consular officer with the State Department. And as part of my cover, I would do these vetting interviews. And it's really hard to do. And we depend on the locals to help us do it. Not local police, not local security forces, local employees, of that country who work for the State Department. And I told him, I said, well, Congressman, I'm pretty comfortable with you vetting them. You're a spy. You're designed to try and figure out who's a good guy and who's a bad guy. Even our State Department people who do that vetting don't get any psychological training. They don't get interrogation training. They're just like clerks. And those are the people doing the so-called, high-level vetting. That's just crazy and dangerous. And we end up with cases like we had with this shooter.
Well, here's the problem, of course. I mean, somebody seeking asylum because what's the legitimate basis is political violence or religious persecution. So where are they going to be coming from? Actually, these days they could be coming from Western Europe, but generally speaking, you're not having asylum seekers come from first world Western nations. And so, I still want America to be a haven for people that are suffering political or religious persecution. Think about Christians in Nigeria right now. But at the same time, we have this problem where people who know, like yourself, are saying, the vetting is only so good and you can only do so much so fast. And so there needs to be, it seems to me, something on the order of a safe third country, like we do, generally speaking, for asylum seekers that are under no exigent circumstances. Even for those who are under exigent circumstances, a safe third country where we can have some relationship where people that are seeking asylum can be placed here or there until we can process their application to, a reasonable degree of certitude and then still maintain America's status as a beacon for those suffering under oppression.
Yeah, we have to try and come up with that system. We do not have one there now, and we can't just do a hand wave like the Biden administration did and say, well, we don't have time to do all of them, but they need to come, so let's just let them in. We'll deal with them after the fact. That is suicidal on a societal level. You can't do that, and now we're seeing the results, which are not good.
On another topic, Trump apparently had a call with Nicolas Maduro, the dictator in Venezuela. He wouldn't go into much detail other than to say, yes, I had a call with him.
The answer is yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about
I can't do that.
Sure, what did you say? Did you say it went well?
I would say it went well or badly.
He wouldn't say if it went well or bad, but Fox News was reporting that he gave Maduro an ultimatum to flee Venezuela as the potential of land operations loom. This after he sort of, via social media, closed the skies over Venezuela, and a lot of airlines, obviously taking the President of the United States seriously, have diverted flights accordingly. So what's your handle on developments with respect to Venezuela?
Well, they're not going well. Obviously, Maduro is not playing along. He's thinking he's going to tough it out against Trump. I think that's probably a bad guess on his part. This Trump is serious. He wants Maduro to go. He prefer for him to go voluntarily, so we don't have to do anything else about it. But I'm not sure that's an option. Maduro is kind of a hardhead. He's a real dedicated radical Marxist, and he thinks he can win this. And that's not a good scenario for America right now.
Well, I know Suburban Dad on the download there, Tim Kaine in Virginia, has said he's refiling a resolution to require congressional approval for military action in Venezuela. And there's still this sort of hot potato about the boat strikes on narco-terrorists. But, I mean, to do land operations in Venezuela, you would expect and you would desire Trump to go to Congress for that, would you not?
It depends. If it's the military, yes. If it's the intel community, that's a covert action that does not necessarily require congressional approval. It does require congressional notification of the appropriate leaders of both parties in the House and the Senate, the folks that are on the intel committees, that sort of thing. So more to come on this, depending on how the president decides to do it. If we launch a Marine, amphibious group there, you're supposed to get congressional approval according to the War Powers Act. Mm-hmm. Now, again, there's still the debate as to how long after an action does the president have before he has to provide those briefings. And the executive branch and legislative branch still regularly disagree on that. And there's not a heck of a lot the Senate can do about that. They can say, hey, you can't do that. You've got to tell us. Not necessarily so.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And Stephen Bucci joined us at the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Hello, my name is Dr. Michael Huber. I'm the co-founder and developer